Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident fanalist, as always, Ryan Schlip. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_data. Well, why don't we start with the news about the Green Bay Packers season ticket situation. They are going to be raising prices. I haven't seen a ton of people throwing a fit about it, but I know that's usually a tradition. NFL teams, NBA teams, whatever. Sports teams raise prices, because that's what prices do. They go up, and fans freak out about it. The bigger news, though, is the Green Bay Packers putting foot down on season ticket holders who sell tickets. We actually talked about this, so shout out to all the, Brian Gutekunst and Mark Murphy listening to the show. I appreciate it, and you're welcome for all the great recommendations that you get here. It says in their release, additionally, the organization is continuing its non-renewal exercise, which has taken place in recent years to ensure Packers season ticket holders season tickets are being used as intended. This year, as part of the exercise, the organization declined to renew the season tickets of accounts that have sold 100% of their tickets for regular season games for multiple years. Tickets not being renewed will be offered to fans on the waiting list. Account holders with tickets not being renewed are receiving letters from the Packers ticket office for more information. I think that's fantastic. I think it's unfortunate that people put themselves on a list so that they can get tickets and then turn a profit for it. But they are there, and now that little money-making scheme is no more, which is fantastic. It should speed things up with people on the list. And I understand it's not all people doing that. You have different situations. People move away. They just can't use them, whatever. Fine. Either way, it's very obvious that you're not able to or are unwilling to use them. And so now you'll be losing it. Now, granted, it's going to be very easy to circumvent this. People that found out about this policy and have not been thrown off can very easily make sure that they go to a game a year. And then we'll see if the Packers continue to further crack down beyond this. But either way, I think it's a beneficial thing. I think it's good for the team. There's far too many home games with fans from other teams sitting in our stands. That needs to stop. If you want tickets, go to the game. If you don't want to go to the game, then you don't need the tickets. Season tickets make sense for fans that live nearby that want to go to a bunch of games. If that's not you, then you don't need them, and you certainly should not be buying them just so that you can sell them at an increased price. Just my opinion, which doesn't matter, but at the same time, it is now your reality, so it does matter for those of you who I'm talking to. What else we got going on in the goodies today? There's a lot going on. Again, I'm gonna stay away a little bit today from kind of wrapping up the combine, because I think I'm just gonna kind of let it continue as things happen. I'll jump in, throw a couple little tidbits out there, but I want to kind of let the dust settle a little bit and kind of go back and recap it. It's just hard to everybody's in the throes of it, so I want to let it finish, let people kind of process. Let the draft evaluators do their work and come back and kind of make some determinations. However, we'll get there when we get there. Let's start with this. I wanted to. It just kind of hit me today. I saw this. So Diana Rossini did a article for The Athletic, just kind of going through some news. Nothing necessarily earth-shattering. We'll cover a couple of the things, but She had a kind of a throwaway comment in there about how now that the Rams are off the table for Aaron Rodgers, his window for a championship team or something to that effect is closing. And it just kind of occurred to me in that moment, he has to retire, right? I mean, we as in I, but we're casually talking about, oh, you could go to the Giants or maybe like the Raiders or something. We can't be serious with this. Aaron Rodgers wants to go somewhere where he's going to win, so he went to the Jets. He thought he could win there. Like, they got a great receiver room. They're going to bring in a bunch of my people. I'll get my coach there. They got a great defense. They got Robert Saleh. Like, we're going to go win a Super Bowl. He didn't go there just because. He would have loved to go to the Rams, maybe the Steelers, but I don't think they want him. You really think Rodgers is going to finish out? I mean, the quote apparently to the Jets from Aaron Rodgers is he has a lot of unfinished business because of how bad last year went. He wants to prove to the world he's still got it. He ain't going to the freaking Giants. And he has no reason to go to the Raiders. There's nothing there. I don't know what options he has, which is such a sad way for his career to end, for him to be looking around. It's like when you're playing dodgeball and everybody else is getting picked, and at the end, he's just kind of standing there looking around with nowhere to go. All the teams are full, you know? I mean, one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game, and he's sitting there looking around, getting offers maybe from the Giants, who are also considering other options. Can you imagine being in a situation where one of the worst teams in all of football is saying, hey, we might be interested in you. We're also talking to Sam Darnold. We'll let you know. Bro, you gotta do something here, bro. You gotta work it out. You gotta go out strong here. I mean, and by that I essentially mean cut your losses. I don't see a path. I mean, unless he really wants to retire and then wait for an injury to happen and then unretire, you know, like Lamar goes down and he's like, hey guys, you know, like, I'd be willing to unretire if you want to come get me. That right now is got to be best case scenario. There's no way. There's no way. There's just no good situation right now. Unless I'm missing one. The only possible decent situations seem to not want you. I don't think the Steelers want him. I don't think Minnesota wants him. I think it's over. And if he goes to the Giants, good Lord. I mean, as much as I want this redemption tour to fail miserably, I'm going to feel bad watching that one. You know, your legacy is kind of our legacy, Rodgers. You know what I mean? Like a little bit. I don't want to have to brag about the great Aaron Rodgers and have people snicker. You know what I mean? Kind of had that a little bit with Brett Favre, and I'm not a fan of it. Well, you mean that guy that texted the cheerleader with the Jets over there and had a scandal with the government? Like, no, not that guy. The guy that played with the Pack, like the guy with a bunch of interceptions. No, you're before the year 2000, all right? Just, he won a Super Bowl. Shut up. I don't want to do that again. I want to say Aaron Rodgers and everyone goes, oh, man, he's the greatest ever. And what are we going to get? Aaron Rodgers. Oh, you mean COVID, Pat McAfee, Jets fiasco? No, it's not what I mean. It's not what I mean, folks. In other free agency / trade, whatever, offseason news, everybody is aware that Deebo Samuel is on the move. There's already been a lot of talks, obviously, but there's also been talk about possibly Brandon Ayuk being on the move. That is to say, potentially both receivers could be gone. I don't know exactly how definitive it is as opposed to wildly speculative and probably not. But the GM has made comments about wanting to get younger. Brandon Ayuk is, I think, going to miss a bunch of time starting this season already. So the wheels are turning for the 49ers to already probably have to start replacing guys. You're losing one. You got another guy that's not old, but, you know, drafting a receiver is not off the table regardless. So that'll be something to keep an eye on if they do decide to move on from him. I think it would be a little silly, in my opinion, but it's out there as a scenario. Additionally, Myles Garrett, there is a little bit of momentum, but not in a direction that any of us would like. Diana Rossini, citing sources, was told the Eagles' interest in Garrett is real and passes along a quote from rival GM who wonders if Garrett is this offseason Saquon Barkley for Howie Roseman. Now, they currently don't really have the cap space to make this work. However, they got a bunch of free agents they could certainly let walk, which would end up being a benefit. They'd have to let pretty much everybody walk, which would mean potentially some defensive line people entering free agency for us to possibly pick at. But unfortunately, that has become a thing. Eagles are very likely to make a push for Myles Garrett. And obviously, Garrett leaving and wanting to go to a place where you have championship aspirations, there's really no better team than to go to the team that just won a Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Especially on the back of elite defensive talent and a solid... I mean, like I said, one of the more well-rounded teams I've ever seen. All right, why don't we take an early break? I want to come back, and we're going to spend all the rest of our time on the draft, which is to say the combine. A good amount of news and notes. I'm going to kind of pick through some different stuff I don't have, I have way too much to go through all of it, but I will try to find a way to touch on the most important pieces. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. So for starters, why don't we start with the teams so far that we found out the Packers have met with at the Combine. This is, again, via Easton Butler and his little spreadsheet. One of these meetings has been an informal meeting, and that was with Jihad Campbell, the linebacker. All the rest of these were formal visits. They include edge rusher Braden Swinson, tight end Colson Loveland, cornerback Jahdae Barron, cornerback Benjamin Morrison, edge rusher Princely Uman-Malin, who I do really like, by the way. Don't know how to say his name, but I like him. Defensive tackle Alfred Thomas, linebacker Danny Stutzman, wide receiver Matthew Golden, running back Jaden Blue, cornerback Quincy Riley, edge rusher James Pierce, and center Jared Wilson. Now, a couple of these probably would stand out. First of all, it should be noted that almost every single one of the positions that they've met with is a position of need. Not all of them, but a large portion of them. Edge, corner, defensive tackle, and wide receiver and center make up almost all of them. There's one running back, one linebacker, and one tight end, not including Jihad Campbell, which was informal. Now, before we get too much into it, remember, a lot of this, a meeting doesn't mean interest necessarily. In fact, it could mean the opposite, and I'll get to that with one of these guys where I think it might be the opposite. A meeting means I'm not sure how I feel yet. That could be essentially one of two things. One, we can't decide where to put you. We're a little torn, varying opinions in the room. And two, we have some negatives that we want to dismiss, if at all possible, to find out if we want to take you off the board. So number one, we need to find out where to put you on the board. Number two, we want to find out if we're going to take you off the board. Now, there's a couple names that seem familiar that are potential first-round picks, right? Jahdae Barron, first round. Benjamin Morrison, first round. Uman-Malin, I don't know, I'm trying here. Maybe first round or possibly second, somewhere in that range. Matthew Golden, probably first round. And then there's James Pierce, the edge rusher out of Tennessee. James Pierce is the guy that absolutely crushed it in the Combine, and most people are probably looking at that going, yeah, James Pierce killed it at the Combine, makes sense the Packers would meet with him. I don't think they're meeting with him because they're really excited about him, and they just think that he's super great, and it's also weird because he should be long gone by the time he gets to the Packers, right? At least that's how it felt. Apparently, that isn't the case. In fact, I'm going to make two predictions for you. Number one, he's going to make it to the Packers. Number two, the Packers don't have him on their board. It's being reported right now that multiple teams have already taken him off their board because of off-the-field concerns. So there's a couple different things with Pierce. And it makes sense to meet with a guy because some of it is off-the-field incidents and some of it is more personality. The big one, though, in December of 2023, Pierce was pulled over for driving 63 in a 35. During the incident, he failed to provide proper identification or proof of insurance, and his North Carolina license was reportedly suspended. Although the charges were dropped, the episode raised questions about his judgment and reliability on field. Beyond that, a former high school teammate, in a now-deleted social media post, described him as quote-unquote actually crazy, with severe anger issues. So here are some actual quotes. First of all, multiple teams have significant character concerns about Pierce. Quote, "He's in danger of getting dropped off our board," said the director of player personnel for an AFC playoff team. Quote unquote, "Granted, we are a strict team in terms of character, but we have a lot of concerns, and I think he probably is not a fit for us. One team drafting in the top 16 has already removed him from their draft board." So a lot of people doing backflips about the fact that he ran a fast 40, which again, as I said, is not nearly as impressive when you look at his size and the overall body of work of athleticism. It's impressive. He's athletic. There's no doubt about it. But when you look at the pool of people, and I had asked the question, if one of these guys were to fall, which one would it be? I have to assume if you're going to let somebody slip past and go after an edge rusher, this is the guy you're probably going to let go past you. Now, all it takes is one team to say, never mind, I'm pulling the trigger. But I would not be surprised if he ends up making it to 23 And I would not be surprised if he slides past 23. Because of all teams that would take a risk on a guy like this, the Packers are probably not one of them. And again, it makes a lot of sense that the Packers would want to have a formal sit-down with a guy like James Pierce, because this is a guy that, based on talent, should be long gone. This is a guy that, based on talent, if he had no character issues, the Packers would sprint. They would probably trade up if he fell far enough for a guy like this. So you want to sit down and make your own determination on whether or not you're interested. And it's really just a yes or no proposition. Either you're willing to or you're not willing to. And if you're willing to, then it becomes, game on if he starts to fall. I would make one counterpoint to my own point, and that is Devonte Wyatt. Devonte Wyatt was a bit of an outlier that's very similar to this situation. He is a guy that is shockingly athletic. He's a guy that would have gone a lot earlier had it not been for some off-the-field character concerns. He slid, and it was the Packers that pulled the trigger on him. And to their credit, they obviously did their homework on him. They had their sit-downs with him, and they determined that he wouldn't be a problem. Aside from possibly having issues in terms of maybe he's not putting in the effort he should, I don't know. There have been no, knock on wood, character issues with him that I'm aware of. I haven't heard anything. So that'll be something to kind of keep an eye on. Couple other notable things here. Mike Green did not work out due to a hamstring issue. It's a pretty minor thing, but, as Packer fans, you hear that, and there's a part of me that already isn't that excited about Mike Green to begin with. It's like, you know what? No, let's just not. Small school thing, the hamstring thing, no thanks. Peter Schrager, and there's a couple of these, to be fair, and we'll see if I can find a few of the other ones, but Peter Schrager had said that he is consistently being told that Emeka Egbuka has been the most delightful and impressive interview of any of the prospects there. So that's pretty cool to hear. A few of the other things that are happening today that are pretty cool. Matthew Golden ran a 4.30. That's pretty huge. Matthew Golden is kind of one of the guys, the Packers did have a formal meeting with him. Packers could be interested, certainly, in a guy like Golden. Potential questions to scheme fit or whatever, but I do like Golden. I had mentioned I have to go back again and kind of refamiliarize myself a little bit, but I'd mentioned I didn't really get it with Golden at first, and then as time went on, you start to see the vision of like, okay, I understand why he's what he is. But for him to be what he is and also be a 4.3 guy is quite impressive. So that's somebody to keep an eye on. Jaden Higgins was he's having himself a real nice combine. Jaden Higgins is known for being a really big guy, so he's already in a lot of Packer fans' minds. I think he's one of the guys that had really low drops, and he ran, what the heck did he run? A 4.47. So to be that big and be a 4.47 guy, that's not blazing fast or anything, but it is for his size, that is incredible. 6'4", 214. And then lastly, I want to give a shout out to Chimere Dike. I was actually kind of shocked to see this. So first of all, Chimere Dike was a Badgers football player. Really was not a huge standout guy. For an offense that's terrible to be like, a decent wide receiver. But we always rooted as a family for him because he's actually friends with my cousin. They went to the same high school and everything, so we found out about it. We always rooted for the guy. He went off to Florida. I didn't think he was going to really do anything. Didn't think he would ever end up in the NFL or anything like that. Well, he ends up going to Florida. He goes to a bowl and dominates. He gets a call up to go to the Senior Bowl, has a really good week. Then he gets an invite to the Combine, and he ran a 4.34. This is impossible. I don't believe that. So he ran a 4.34. That part is real for sure, which is shocking. I had no idea he had that kind of speed. I got to see if this is true. His overall RAS, as I continue to look that up, is a 9.8, which is fantastic. He's 6', 196, which is his only real knock. Elite explosion with a 38.5 vert and a 10.8 broad. 4.34 40-yard dash with a 2.53 20-yard split and a 1.53 10-yard split. You got Jacob Infante, and it's blowing up all over the internet, but just as an example, Jacob Itfanti is saying, receivers I've been most impressed with Luther Burden, Matthew Golden, Jimmy Horn, Jack Besh, Chimmy Dike, and Jaden Higgins. It's just so cool to see his name with that group because, again, I was like, I don't think he's even going to be an undrafted free agent, was my understanding of the situation. And at this point, I'm starting to think he's going to get drafted. So fingers crossed he ends up a Packer because that would be super cool. Waukesha kid goes to the Badgers, took a little detour, comes back to the Packers. That would be very cool. Apparently he ran at 23.37 miles per hour, which was the fourth fastest. Isaiah Bond, who was bragging about, I'm going to break the 40 time, he ran like a 4.3 flat or something. It's like, bro, you can't be bragging about I'm going to break the 40 time and you couldn't even get into the 4.2s. Shut up. But he got to 24.17 miles per hour, which is stupid fast. Isaiah Bond is a freak. Matthew Golden, 23.5 miles an hour. I did not realize Matthew Golden had like premier speed on top of what he had. So that's going to really raise his profile for me. I'm excited to go back and check him out. But then Ty Felton and Chimere Dike, number 4. So, Elick Ayomanor is 7th on the list. Elick, I think it is Ayomanor, 22.82 miles an hour. Atta boy. Ayomanor. I like me some Ayomanor. I'm excited, man. One final thing before we take a break and I scour trying to find some stuff. The guy that's really been blowing everything up is another guy whose name I need to learn how to say. Nick Emanwari, the safety. Now, I already had mentioned he was on Feldman's freak list. He was expected to blow everything up. He could potentially, I think he was break the vert record or something. All this craziness. Well, he did exactly that. He absolutely tore everything up. The funniest thing that I saw, Kent Lee Platt, who is the RAS guy, the creator of RAS, he posted his RAS, but at multiple different positions. So at free safety, so what is he listed at? Strong safety? Yeah, so he's listed as a strong safety and hit a perfect 10 RAS at strong safety. He also is a perfect 10 at free safety and a 10 at cornerback and at wide receiver. In fact, even at linebacker, he would have a 9.87. 6'3", 220 pounds, 43-inch vert, 11-foot 6-inch broad jump, 4.4 40-yard dash time. So this dude is just an athletic freak. There's no doubt about it. Have no expectation of the Packers taking a swing at him, but it's been a lot of fun kind of watching him go through all this. All right, let's take our final break. We'll come back and parse through some of the notes I've been able to find over these last couple of days. All right, so I want to start with some of the teams and just kind of see what the rumors have been team-wise. We'll see if we get to the prospects, of which I have dozens of prospect notes. So the number one pick is pretty interesting because we've heard that they've already received calls, apparently. The calls are already coming in, trying to gauge how much they'd want. So that offer is already on the table. There's kind of conflicting reports, though. Number one, and it's not really a report as much as a speculation, but the speculation is that Shedeur Sanders is a better fit. The problem is, the last couple of days, the news has been that Shedeur Sanders has been massively overrated. Teams are not as high on him as people thought, that he's more of a back-of-the-first-round type of a prospect, and Cam Ward is by far the number one prospect. Number one quarterback prospect. So Shedeur Sanders is like, oh yeah, that fits your scheme more, but it sounds like no chance they spend a first-round or first overall pick on him. The Giants at pick 3, first of all, they supposedly like Ward more than Sanders, which it sounds like most teams do, if not all of them. However, the Giants are not in love with either prospect, but they are desperate for prospects. The rumor is if they're not able to grab a quarterback in free agency, they're very likely to get Ward or Sanders. And if the quarterbacks are gone, they like Abdul Carter as their option. It sounds like, however, Shedeur Sanders, there's a good chance will be there. And if they really are this desperate, then it sounds like 3 is the floor, despite the fact that some people don't think he's really worth that. Not really a first-round thing, but apparently the Raiders are very interested in quarterback Jalen Milroe. So maybe watch that as they come back around the other side, possibly in the second round. Apparently they also were very interested in Quinn Ewers, so very good chance, but by the time the second round rolls around, I'm assuming they have an early second round pick, that they didn't trade it away or something, that could be the Raiders' second pick. As for the Panthers, the name to watch is Mykel Williams. Apparently they like him and Shamar Stewart. I would assume Mykel Williams would be the more likely of the two, but those are the two, edge rusher being a big need, those are the two names apparently to keep an eye on for Carolina at pick 8. The Colts apparently have a lot of interest in guard Tyler Booker. I don't think this has been a super common pick for them, so it's a little bit of a departure, but it's kind of an interesting little tidbit here. The Colts apparently envision a dominant interior offensive line with Booker, Quentin Nelson, and Ryan Kelly. Multiple team sources predict that Booker will be drafted somewhere between pick 15 and 25, so that's pretty close to being in line with the Colts at 14. A dual note here, Falcons and Buccaneers apparently very interested in Jihad Campbell. The Falcons are first at 15. Jihad Campbell apparently very highly regarded by the NFL scouting community. Both teams, Falcons and Buccaneers, are quote-unquote really high on Campbell. He is considered a top 20 pick by both teams. Apparently the Falcons, little tidbit, Falcons considered trading back into the first round for Jack Campbell back in 2023, but the Lions selected him at pick 18. All right, let's pivot over to some of the prospects. Here's what we'll do. Why don't we go through our list of likely Packers options in the first round, see what we can find. All right, Mike Green, he did a little bit of Radio Row. He was obviously planning on doing some of the combine stuff, but had his hamstring injury. He did say that he was expecting to run in the low 4.6s and high 4.5s, so definitely an athletic dude. He apparently, similar to Tucker Kraft, had opportunities to leave the school he was at and go somewhere bigger for some NIL opportunities, but decided to stay behind. He said, I found a lot more in my tank. There was a lot more that I wanted to prove. So I feel like that's one of those high character things that teams are going to like. And then the only other thing that I found interesting is a lot of silly nonsense in here. He was asked, in a game of this or that, would you rather sack Caleb Williams or Drake May? And he said Caleb Williams. So he's got that going for him. Josh Simmons is currently sitting at 18. He's an offensive tackle, probably not the most popular pick for the Packers, but he is there. Apparently, the word around town on him is that although he's consensus big board 18, he did suffer an ACL tear mid-October, which impacted his draft stock, and right now NFL teams are split on whether he is a first or second rounder. So, again, it only takes one team. He could go 15 overall. He can go 10 to the Bears. I mean, it just takes one team to fall in love with the guy and think that the injury is really no issue. However, when you hear that teams are split on him being a first to second round pick, he could absolutely fall to the back of the first. He could fall out of the first. Kind of a funny note, I was looking at Shamar Stewart, the edge rusher at 19, and I actually got a Nick Scorton note. He was asked about some of his teammates, and he said Nick Scorton, his teammate, is the goofiest person he knows. Just makes me like Nick Scorton even more. But Shamar Stewart grew up in Florida. He says he plays football for his mom. He said, growing up, I see her work multiple jobs trying to support me and my family, and said he wants to be able to take care of her after all this long time. Also says he's willing to do whatever coaches need to help the team win. He did say he prefers playing inside over the edge. It's not going to matter really, but it's an interesting note because he's seen largely as an edge rusher. It's interesting to hear him say that he prefers to be an interior player. He says he wants NFL teams to see him as a great guy on and off the field, caring, loving, and driven to be the best ever after combine interviews. Away from football, he spends time with family, especially his sister, who lives with him, gaming, fishing, or taking long drives in his new truck from Houston and back. He was asked about some of his, lack of sack production. He said sometimes the stats don't necessarily show. Sometimes the stats don't replicate being the best football player for the team, is what his quote was. He also said college football, there's a lot of quick throwing offenses. He's admitted that he has missed a couple sacks because, quote, your eyes get big and you want to kill them so bad. It's an awesome quote. He says he models his game after Julius Peppers, which is great. Also lists Myles Garrett and Nick Bosa as influences. As for Walter Nolan, kind of similarly, he says he wants NFL teams to leave the combine knowing he's genuine and caring despite his stoic demeanor. It's another Romeo Dobbs type. Eager to share his personal story directly rather than through secondhand accounts. He also says he likes, he obviously is inside, but he moves all over the line. He says he likes being inside for the same reason guards are slower. Away from football, he's a self-proclaimed gaming nerd, spending time on his PC with GTA 5. Describes his game as violent, viewing the field as a war zone, where the opponent is the enemy trying to take food from his family's plate. Defensive tackle Kenneth Grant says he enjoys fishing, hunting, spending time outdoors with his dog. Be a good fit in Wisconsin. He does mention that pass rush is an area he needs to improve. He's aiming to rely less on finesse and more on power moves as a primary attack, and that is an interesting thing. I'd mentioned that he doesn't play like a power guy despite his size. But if he can tap into that, that obviously would be a huge benefit. Never missed a game at Michigan. Credits his routine of cold tubs. Emeka Ibuka grew up in Washington as a Seahawks fan, unfortunately. Was a serious baseball player, apparently, with MLB scout attention. Had an NIL deal with Mark Wahlberg Chevrolet. He was a team captain. Describes himself as one of the most reliable people in the draft. Considers himself dynamic with the ball in his hands. Julio Jones was his favorite receiver growing up. Jahdae Barron, listed as one of the guys that had a very good combine, by the way. He had a comment, I try to put all that pain that I went through out there on the field. I don't know specifically what that's referencing. Tried to look into it, couldn't find anything, but interesting. Apparently in 9th grade, he wrote, I will go to University of Texas and will win Jim Thorpe. He did that. He won the Jim Thorpe Award for Nation's Best Defensive Back. He was actually inspired by Michael Huff, who's a former Thorpe Award winner. Sounds like this has been a serious passion of his to be a dominant corner. He's put in a lot of work to be able to play at both positions on the inside as well as on the outside. Worked with lots of players as well as a lot of different coaches. Coach Joseph, whoever that is, now currently with the Saints, for teaching him route recognition. Said he had to learn different mindsets, less aggressive at corner, more aggressive at nickel. He attended extra meetings to learn multiple positions. He said the Jim Thorpe Award was 51% on my character and 49% on my ability. He has strong Texas pride, mentioning, I always grew up a Longhorn, and who wouldn't want to bleed that burnt orange? Credits his mother for his work ethic. Said she works 2 jobs. She raised me to be a very smart young man. Mentions 3 key principles that guide him. Faith in God, to not only rely on him when things are good, but also when things are bad. His why, which is his mother who worked 2 jobs. And inspiration from Inky Johnson is the 3rd thing. He said, I watch Inky Johnson every morning. He posts 6 o'clock every single morning. Who is that? It's a motivational speaker. That's kind of what I thought. Looks like former football player, college football player, turned inspirational speaker. It's been a long time since I listened to an inspirational speech. I'll check it out. Every once in a while, man, it seems cheesy, but it'll pull you out of a funk if you get stuck once in a while. He said he would recommend watching his game against Arkansas, quote, me blitzing through the A-gap, me blitzing off the edge, me playing dime, me playing star, me man up on the tight end, me playing corner. So I'll have to go find that one. Explaining how his versatility gives him unique perspective, he said, when I was at corner, I knew what would stress the nickel. When I was at nickel, I knew what would stress the corner. That's a fair point. I really like what he's saying. I mean, you can tell he's an extremely intelligent person. And he's the type of guy that is not just interested in his position, but how what he's doing affects the defense and how the defensive scheme is played at a deep level from where he is outward. That's a huge thing. It's really, really, really impressive. I'm starting to really like Jahdae Barron from what I'm hearing. I'm sure a lot of these guys are this way. They're very, very intelligent. They understand these things, but it's very cool to hear a guy that did it all, going to all the extra meetings, played all the different positions, played them both at a high level, which demonstrates the amount of work that he put in. Apparently, NFL teams have discussed him playing corner, nickel, and safety. He does believe that the nickel position is where he can create the most impact. Quote, you could be in the run fit, you could be in the pass fit. Apparently, he gets advice from Texas alum Quandre Diggs about tackling techniques. I mean, this guy's plugged in, man. This guy lives and breathes football. That's all he does, apparently. It's all he's been about since he was little. Models his game after several NFL defensive backs. He says Trent McDuffie, the way Kansas City uses him going at corner into the slot. Byron Murphy of the Vikings notes their mutual connection through his defensive coordinator. Budda Baker, also coached by DC at Washington. The interviewer, this was with NBC, compared him to Rondé Barber. So, all right then. Another Texas guy, Matthew Golden. He says his best game was against Arizona State. Says he carried a chip on his shoulder to prove himself at the highest level. He's confident he can play both inside and outside, willing to fulfill whatever role the teams need him at. Says he wants to improve his run blocking, especially finishing blocks and staying in position. He believes continuous learning through coaching feedback will help him get better. Nick Scorton, on whether he prefers to be down or up. He says he likes being down on early downs because you can be more explosive, and he likes standing up on third down because you get better vision. He developed the signature cross-chop move as his primary rush technique. Also utilizes spin move despite being larger defensive end. Says he enjoys the creative aspect of pass rushing, watching more edge rushers, learning more about football. Said he learned situational football at Purdue as a freshman. At Texas A&M, he gained advanced knowledge of run schemes and played inside positions. Their defense required strong gap integrity and run defense responsibility. He credits the older players for mentoring him. He's another guy that enjoys fishing when he's away from football. Also plays a lot of video games in his free time. But he does say that football is always on his mind. Quote, "When I'm not doing football, all I can think about is football." He's not going to turn 21 until late summer. That's pretty awesome. He is one of the youngest prospects. I already like the guy. You don't have to sell me on him, all right? Originally played inside linebacker before switching to defensive end. Models his game after Dwight Freeney. As for Derek Harmon, he says his best film to watch of him was against Ohio State. He's working on improving winning on first move as a pass rusher. He often wins on his second move and transitional rushes. He models his game after Chris Jones. Grew up a Lions fan. Ugh. Daniel Jeremiah says he's one of the favorites in the interviews. So there's another guy that apparently is doing a really good job with the interviews. Siobhan Revel, kind of interesting. He was saying build the perfect defensive back, and he goes through a bunch of guys, and he did actually pick Jair Alexander for football IQ. And that's across multiple generations because Deion Sanders was on-field swagger. Said he prefers man press coverage, having played press man his entire life. Notes that zone coverage requires attention to additional details. He outlined key techniques for playing press man, anchoring with inside foot from the line of scrimmage, exercising patience and reading the receiver by studying the release moves, using film study and repetition in practice to refine the approach. He compares the mental side of playing man coverage to boxing. It says maintaining discipline is crucial. Once focus is lost and the receiver is burnt, the play is over. If given a chance to train with NFL player, past or present, the three he chose, Jalen Ramsey, Jair Alexander, and Deion Sanders. Be crazy if we drafted him and gave him number 23. Says he wants teams to recognize him as a uniquely quiet, coachable individual who will give 110% effort every day, making the transition to the NFL seamless. Underlined his commitment to hard work and team success without creating friction. Boy, oh boy, the Packers, somebody gave him the answers to that test. How does he stay productive during his downtime? Drawing, gaming with his brother, or walking around to clear his mind. He experimented with learning guitar, both the acoustic and electric, as part of exploring new hobbies. Emphasized that missing a workout motivates him to get back at it because he's been doing this stuff because he's got a ACL, I think it is, injury. He's been rehabbing. I do like him, man. I really do. I don't think the Packers are going to draft him, but I really like him. Not sure how many more we should go through here. Might just leave it at that because we're already out of the first round. We can go on for quite a while. There's still plenty more that we can do. And I did skip quite a few because I didn't get to their interviews. Obviously, a lot of these guys, I got to go on YouTube and try to scour through and whatnot. That's where a lot of these came from. CBS and NBC each had interviews with these guys to kind of go through some of the details. So I took notes and whatnot. But I got to go back and find some more. I just figure since we've been doing all of those, and I haven't even had a chance to sit down and either listen or even read through what these guys are saying, we should probably do that. So, but yeah, I think that's a good place to stop for now. It's interesting as I'm going through this, I was using the consensus big board to kind of see, who we should look at next. Siobhan Revel out here at 34 now. He has dropped down to Benjamin Morrison down to 37. Both of these guys out of the first round. Azaria Thomas at 39. So, corner in the first round is pretty much Jahdae Barron or bust unless you're, real up early for Will Johnson or Travis Hunter. Pretty interesting. I wouldn't hate it if we end up with Siobhan Revel or I don't really care for the other two at this point, but if we ended up grabbing one on the back end. I doubt they fall that far, but I'm just saying. Anyways, folks, I'm going to leave it at that. You guys have a good rest of your day. I will talk to you tonight, tomorrow, whatever. Have a good one. Bye-bye.